In front of me today is Yamaha's relatively new P225, which replaces their P125a, something that was still fairly current only just a few months ago. We're going to go through these machines and find out where the upgrades have occurred, what the differences are, so that if you're out there looking for new versus say used, because I know there's quite a few P125s out there on the used market, you might even still find a few new, what you're in for and what those key differences are. Generally speaking, the P125 and even the 125a were really strong offerings, and there were aspects of those instruments that I really liked. In fact, there were some parts of those instruments that I thought Yamaha was doing the very best of in that price category. Notably, the performance and the tuning of their onboard speaker system. Because of course, we have to remember, we're talking about the $600 USD range. So an instrument that had a really great sonic presentation out of it was a little unusual, and I thought Yamaha had done a really solid job of offering that up. I also thought that the 125 was unique in that it was one of the first instruments to offer a USB audio interface, as well as being one of the first to offer discrete 1/4-inch outputs for that price range. Most of the other companies, of course, caught up, rolling notably with the FP30X, but it took a couple years. Then came the 125A, which really didn't do anything except strip away the USB audio interface functionality, and from what my fingers could tell me, maybe a bit of an adjusted or upgraded GHS action. Now, to Yamaha's credit, they didn't try and call this a new model, but I think it was pretty clear to most people that this was a trade-off of keeping the price point stable while stripping away something that maybe most people weren't really making that great a use of. Now comes the P225, which is supposed to be an upgrade to the P125, but again, Yamaha has not really touched the price point. And of course, very seldom do you get something for nothing in this life. If we are keeping the same price point again after multiple years of having the 125 and 125a off there, have they just found a way to be even more efficient, or have they stripped something back that's missing now from the experience of playing the 125a? Here are the three things that I really liked about the P125a and the three things that jumped out to me about the new P225. Number one, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the speaker performance on the 125a was definitely top of class when it came to instruments in that $500 to $600 USD range. It was punchy, it was a tight sound, and there was a lot of detail and clarity coming out the top of the instrument. Feature number two, for anybody who had played GHS actions prior to the 125a, I think that there's been some evolution or improvement to that action over the course of the years. I've been playing on a GHS action from Yamaha for literally decades now, and I thought the action on the 125a was probably the best iteration of the GHS that I'd ever played. It was a pretty enjoyable action, fairly responsive, nice and quick, and it felt medium in terms of its weightedness and balance. And finally, number three, I would say the connectivity options on it. Having those 1/4-inch outputs as well as the ability to have manual speaker control on and off, these are common features once you get up closer to the $1,000 range or over. It's not so common when you're down in this price range. Now moving up to the 225. Well, the first thing that catches my eye here is the aesthetic look of the instrument. They've gone with a more minimalist look. I really like the lines on this, and they've also compressed the form factor. If you look at these instruments from the back, the 225 is notably shorter in thickness than the 125 is, and they've also managed to shave some weight off of this instrument. Number two, on the 225, we have upgraded to the CFX sample set from the pure CF sample set. Both are still using their virtual resonance modeling light engines, but we do have an upgraded sample set on the 225. And number three, the return of the USB audio interface. I think Yamaha probably heard loud and clear that that was possibly an unpopular move when they brought the 125a out, so we get the USB audio interface back. So where are the differences? Well, if you were going to use this primarily without headphones, the differences that you are going to notice are going to be your speaker performance and your action. If you're going to be using this just with headphones or primarily with headphones, you're going to be noticing the CFX sample and the action. Let's give you a sample of the tone out of both of these. I'll start with the 125a and then we'll move up to the 225. So there's definitely more complexity and thickness to the CFX sample that they've got happening on the 225. However, there are a number of other differences. For one, this is using a newly designed action that Yamaha has put in a few different models, including their new P145 and the 225. So this is a compact action which has a slightly shorter pivot length in a different weighting system than the GHS action down here. And depending on how far in or out you play on these keys, you definitely get a much different sense of weight and resistance to the key than you do on the GHS. The overall impression you're left with is that the 125A has a lighter touch than the 225. The 225 has a slightly slower return than the 125 does, and that's really just the geometry, inescapable geometry really, of dealing with a slightly shorter pivot length. It also appears like the key dip on the 125 is slightly deeper than what you get on the 225, which is also going to contribute to just a difference in the sensation. But the second big thing is what I mentioned right in the earlier parts of the video, which is the speaker performance. And I know speakers for some people are an afterthought. Perhaps it's even a non-issue, because as long as the signal coming out either to a computer if you're doing recording or headphones or PA is great, then the speakers possibly are not a big part of your decision. But if you're going to be using this for personal playing, I would say it should be. And when you get these two side by side, my goodness, is the difference enormous. We are not talking about splitting hairs here. We are talking about like polar opposite sonic experiences playing this instrument versus playing that instrument. On the 225, you have a much warmer, much more mid-range tone that is absent quite a bit of the upper mid and upper detail that you get out of the P125. There is just no escaping that you are going to get more detail and more high-end definition out of any instrument that's got a nice big tweeter that's facing straight up at you with all of the surface area, plus another mid-range, more like a full spectrum speaker that's also facing down. What we've got here in the Yamaha is a fairly small 5-centimeter tweeter that's porting out the front, as well as your full spectrum speakers or your mid-range speakers that's actually pointed out the back rather than down. And so if you don't have this up against a wall, you're not going to get a ton of detail back from the wall, and those tweeters just are not outputting the same level of detail as what you get out of the 125A. And I'm just going to play a short passage on each and really just give you speaker audio here so you can hear the huge difference between these two instruments. Now, I should mention that both instruments are just on their default setting. We haven't done anything with EQ, haven't done anything in terms of tweaking some of those basic settings that you can use if you're using the Yamaha remote app. I am not categorically saying that the 125A is a better sound than the 225, because that's super subjective. What I am saying is that there's a big difference, and anybody who pretends that there's not has not truly listened to these things side by side. So if you are a player that really appreciates having a nice clear tone, and that's something that's important to you, as well as a slightly lighter action, you might want to spend a bit of time hunting down a really great condition used P125 or 125A, or if you can still find one box new, you might go that route. If you like a slightly warmer sound, you don't actually want like a ton of high or a ton of detail in the tone coming at you, then I have a feeling that you're going to be pretty happy with the 225. Anyway, we hope that you have found this comparison between the old and new to be helpful, useful, and maybe even a little entertaining. And if you'd like to see more, please stick around the channel and check out all of our piano review videos, both digital and acoustic, and consider subscribing. It really helps us out at the channel here. Give that a like and a share, and help spread our piano joy around the rest of the world. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and we'll see you again soon.